All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this most outstanding journey through the history and future of accounting technology. If you have any questions along the way, we encourage you to ask them using the Q&A icon on your screen, and I'll make sure to get those to our adventurers. We know not everyone here has easy access to a time traveling structure, so this presentation will be recorded in case you want to go back and review it again later. You'll receive the recording along with today's slides via email, and contact information will be included as well with that. So now it is indeed a pleasure to introduce you to two gentlemen that we picked up in the late 1900s. We hope you enjoy your ride along today with Dean Dorton's Philip Massey and Dale Stratton on their excellent legacy adventure.
Thank you very much, Nikki. And I guess just to confirm, if they do go back and watch this later, they are kind of going back in time, right? And doing that. But so
in a manner of speaking.
In a manner of speaking, thank you. So as Nikki said, now we weren't able to actually use any time traveling devices for this presentation. So we're going to rely on the memory of, as Nikki said, two guys that were picked up on the side of the road in the late 90s for doing this kind of stuff. But we're going to try to take you through today a journey of some of the many things that we have learned in our undisclosed number of years working in the accounting software side of things. And I am pleased to be here with my fellow compatriot Dale Stratton today. We'll introduce ourselves in just a few moments, but I do want to take the time to give you a little bit of an agenda. So first, we're going to meet our righteous time travelers through a brief story of each of us. We're going to take you on a bit of a tour, a bit of a flashback to brief history of Microsoft Dynamics GP. We're going to talk about how you might very well be trapped in time, much like Han Solo in his frozen period of time there. We're going to talk about some bogus pitfalls of on-prem software. We're going to talk to Dale is going to take us on a party in the cloud for what could be your next steps there. And then we'll talk about how to wind this up. So this is meant to be a fun little adventure. If you have any questions, as Nikki said, post them in the Q&A. We'll be glad to address them. So without further ado, let's meet the time travelers. First of all, actually, Dale, you want to do the Dean Dorton introduction?
I'd be honored. So can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Fantastic. So I was nominated to do this part because I've been with Dean Dorton for, it will be 20 years in June. So I have the honor.
I think it was just Dean when you started, wasn't it, Dale? I think it was just Dean.
Actually, when I started, it was Dean Dorton Allen, or Dean Dorton Ford. There was no Allen, there was no other offices. We were just in Lexington, and we were 65 people. So I'm not going to read this whole screen to you, but you can see the slide. We're now 542 team members. And what was just in Central Kentucky, just Lexington, is now Lexington, Louisville, Raleigh, Cincinnati, Indianapolis. With the Von Liebman merger, we're all over the place. Like I said, we're 65, almost 10 times bigger than when I started back in 2004. Our expertise goes across the board. We've gone from just tax in the early days to tax and audit to tax and audit business consulting, and our business consulting group now covers litigation support, IT audit services, construction industry work, cybersecurity, software implementation. So we cover a gamut of solutions and different things that we have expertise in. Makes it global reach. We used to have clients centered around Central Kentucky and a few here and there, and now we have clients all over the world that we service. But that's the extent of Dean Dorton's growth. Like I said, I've been here for 20 years. Philip, the Massey Group came on back in early 19, I believe January 1st of 19, and Massey Consulting had a good reach with Dynamics GP and Intacct before that. So we've been able to combine those two forces to make that part of the growth of what we have today.
All right. And honestly, I was looking for a time traveler background on there while you were talking, Dale, and I think I picked the wrong thing because there's balloons back there. But anyway, so to take this a little step further, my name is Philip Massey. I am a CPA, although I would appreciate it if you would keep that to yourself and not tell anybody. I don't tell folks that because the first thing they do is ask me to do taxes, and I don't like doing taxes. I am a North Carolina native, a Tar Heel fan. In fact, I attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, or the University of North Carolina. I've been a CPA since 1994. I've got about 25 years of experience working with Dynamics, specifically most of that with Dynamics GP, but the different pieces and facets of the Dynamics product line. Worked with over 100 Dynamics GP clients, probably implemented 100 Dynamics GP clients over my years. I've also been a Sage Intacct partner. As Dale mentioned, I did at one point have my own firm, and that we became Sage Intacct or Intacct partners in 2011, and that's one of the party on solutions that Dale will talk to you about when we get to that part of the presentation. I have written blogs for various different websites, and I do love in my spare time putting together Lego. It's something that gives me a lot of satisfaction for completing a job. So that's a little bit about me. Dale?
All right, so I'm Dale Stratton. Like I said, been at Dean Dorton here for 20 years, Central Kentucky native. So I lived in Lexington and worked in the Lexington office, and now live just outside in between our Lexington, Louisville offices. And I throw in, and this is just more of rib between Philip and I, that I am a fan of the winningest college basketball team of all time, which is the University of Kentucky. I'm going to go ahead and concede that if I had to pick a number two, North Carolina, and I realize how inflammatory my next statement will be, but the greatest basketball player of all time did play for North Carolina. So I graciously give that up. Microsoft Dynamics GP certified implementer for years now. I've been supporting GP, implementing, supporting sales, everything with Dynamics GP for 20 years. And also Sage Intacct certified implementer and accountant certified in Sage Intacct. Philip, I had to think about this, but I was shocked to realize it was 8 years ago that we took Dean Dorton from GP to Sage Intacct. So that's how long I've been working with that, and it does not seem like that long. But 8 years working with Sage Intacct in that, and I hadn't even thought through that until just today. So.
All right, wonderful. All right, well, you've met your two time traveling guides. Now it's time to go back in time a little bit here. And yesterday, as we were going through this, we kind of decided who would do what, and we were looking at ways to remember who does which slides in these presentations. And the best we could come up with was, let's put the bald guy in there for Philip's part and the young guy with the gray hair in for Dale's part. So this is me. So let's talk a little bit about Dynamics GP and how we got here. So Great Plains, founded in 1981 in Fargo, North Dakota, and it was intended originally as accounting software for Macintosh computers, believe it or not. And that was one of the things. I started working with it in 97, I believe, 96, 97, version 3 of Great Plains Dynamics. Prior to that was Great Plains Accounting, which was a DOS-based software solution that existed for many years. But I started working with it in the late 90s, 96, 97. And at that point, I was still astounded as to how much there was in it that was still geared towards the Apple or Macintosh environment underneath the hood there. But it was founded, Great Plains was founded and started in 1981. The Windows version, the Great Plains Dynamics, which you now know as Dynamics GP, was started sometime around 94. 92, 3, 4, somewhere in there was when that first started coming out. So it's been around for a long time. The company, Great Plains Software, was acquired by Microsoft for $1.1 billion. Dale actually made a $1 billion bid for it. Microsoft just beat him out by the 0.1 part. So Microsoft did acquire them in 2001. In that acquisition, they also received Dynamics SL, or what used to be known as Solomon. They also received FRX software. And then they later purchased Navision, which also got them the Exapta software solution as well. So in a period of less than a year, Microsoft acquired essentially 4 accounting software products. That is important to know, simply for no other reason than what a lot of what you see from Microsoft today is actually not based on GP. It is based on the Navision and Exapta products that they acquired around about the same time. The name of the product went through a number of different changes, ultimately settling on Microsoft Dynamics GP. It was at one point called Microsoft Business Solutions, Great Plains Dynamics, and a number of other different things. But thankfully, they settled on something that was a little bit shorter in 2006. In 2019, Microsoft announced the fixed life cycle, or the modern life cycle, for Dynamics GP. And essentially what that means is you no longer get iterative version numbers for your software. If you all remember, there was a time period where you would get to say Office 2010, Office 2012, Office 2015, and they did the same thing for GP for a number of years. But in 2019, they made the formal announcement that GP 18 is the last version, which is different from GP 2018, little bit confusing there, but 18 is the last official version number, and it would then be 18.1, 0.2, 0.3, etc. They also announced the modern lifecycle portion of this, which means that if you want to remain supported on the GP program, you have to upgrade every time a new version comes out, or at least once a year along those lines. So they are trying to keep folks onto the latest version of the software. What they also did last year, though, was announce the end of sales in certain stepping stones. So there will be a point in time where you will no longer be able to be a new customer for Dynamics GP, and that is set in the 2026 timeframe. And there will come a time shortly after that where you will no longer be able to add additional licenses or anything like that to the software. And that is probably going to be in the 2028 timeframe as well. Basically, Microsoft has more or less gotten to a point where the end of the explained vision of Dynamics GP is 2028. Now, I am not saying right now that GP is going away in the year 2028. There are no official plans to cancel the product. And for the vast majority of the users, you own the software. You have it in your office. And so Microsoft cannot and will not come into your office and take it from you, of course. But there are some indicators by the fact that they are no longer going to accept new clients. They are no longer going to allow existing clients to purchase new users, additional users, new modules, anything along those lines. So something to think about there. And I'll give you a little bit here about some of the things we love about GP, and then Mr. Stratton is going to take you into some details about that. So things we love about GP, it goes back to medieval times, right? That's pretty righteous. I mean, you know, to be able to go back that far with it. As we said before, I started working with it back in 1996, 97. probably 92, I think, was the year that the Great Plains and the Windows version was released, and the DOS version goes back to the early 80s. That's a really long time ago, no matter how much I like to think that it's not. Today, GP would be in the vintage category on eBay, for example, right? I mean, you'd be looking for people that there'd be people looking for this that would be looking for some of that cool old stuff. Now, it does, however, because of that, though, have a very long, very rich history, and it is backed by a very strong company. So it's not a new software program that might have a lot of bugs in it. It's not an unproven solution. GP does what it does, and it does it well. I'm still a fan. As much as I'll make fun of it and poke fun at it, I am still a fan. There's a huge cast of characters. If this were a movie, there would be so many people rolling through the credits at the end of this. There's a very, very large and very strong partner network out there, both providing implementation services as well as add-on solutions. And you do have, excuse me, as much as folks talk about the cloud these days and cloud this and cloud that, you do honestly have a lot of control over the system by having it on-prem. You don't have to wait for a provider to do something for you. If you have the wrong provider, you don't have to wait for them. You don't have to wait for their support sometimes. There's definitely something to be said about sitting in the driver's seat and really being able to have full control. History repeats itself. There are no major changes, and like I said before, you basically hit the end of the line for development on Dynamics GP. There's not going to be any big new modules, big changes, anything like that. And, you can look at that a lot of ways, but one of those ways to look at it is, hey, not a lot's going to change. Smooth sailing. Quick side story, had a customer many years ago who I had worked with in my early days working on Great Plains, and they came back to me probably about 10 to 12 years later, and they wanted to get updated on their Great Plains, and they were still running the version that I had set them up on in 1997. And this was a long time after that. And one of the reasons he wanted to stay on it was that I told him that really not much had changed in all those years, and it still had basically the same interface and all that stuff. So that does have its appeal in some cases. And then you can tinker with the universe. And maybe not the whole universe, but certainly that database access that you have and the ability to hit those tables and do all those kinds of things. It is almost like slipping on that glove, that infinity glove, and snapping your fingers and having a whole bunch of stuff happen for you. So there are definitely some good things that we love about GP, but Dale, can you also tell them how those things that we love about GP can hold us captive?
Sure can, Philip. So you're going to see a lot of those things that were great or could be great can also be negatives. And by the way, I just had a pause on my internet. It's kind of storming here in central Kentucky. So if I disappear for some reason, Philip, you pick up and carry on.
I will do my best.
As Philip was saying, that we are now into what's called modern life cycle. Well, it's just a term GP gives to it, or Microsoft gave to that, which the last update was version 18.6. That was what they do is they do 3 updates a year. One is actually a major update. They do a January.
All right. So it looks like we got one of those dust ups in central Kentucky. I think what really happened was that God heard Dale say Kentucky was a better basketball team, and he brought a storm about on Dale for that. So is GP dust in the wind? So the modern life cycle, basically what that means is it's really going to be compliance and security updates until further notice on it. They have committed to supporting the product through 2028. And if you think about it, that could mean smooth sailing because there's not a lot of updates. That could mean also too that you're getting lost in a lot of the features and things like that that you're not going to have in the system. And I think my cohort is back.
I'm back. I'm back. So I hear a truck beeping outside, so I don't know if they're messing around with the internet. I was going to say I could switch over to my phone, but did you all hear that AT&T had major issues today? So of course that's my network. Of all the days to be talking about cloud software, see if you were on-prem, then this wouldn't happen. The exact benefit of having on-prem. Let's see, Philip, you got through at least 2028. Yes, and I'll share this. It was overheard during one of the partner updates a year and a half ago that essentially one of the C-level people let it slip that there's going to be no more updates for Microsoft Dynamics other than tax and compliance security updates. That's it. So 1099s, payroll tax, things like that. The issue with that is you do have to stay up to date to remain in support. So you do have to update every single version in order to be compliant and maintain support for your system. And in that life cycle, you have to update 18.6 this year, 18.7 next year, 18.8 the year after that. So it is an annual update instead of just waiting 3 or 4 years and jumping from GP 2013 to GP 2015, something of that nature. You really need to go through every single version update. It's a service pack. It's not a full version, but sometimes they do end life cycle for a SQL Server. So a couple of versions ago, SQL Server 2014 and 2016 ended. So you had to move everybody to at least 2017. So you do run into those issues as well in order to maintain support. We have the words here, reading between the lines. I kind of made this joke yesterday to Philip that this isn't really reading between the lines anymore. This is just reading the lines that Microsoft has said, this is coming to an end. So Microsoft is putting all their development efforts towards their cloud software, towards Business Central. And the roadmap that we have hasn't changed since 2019. Philip, I think we have that roadmap on the next slide.
We do. Sorry, Dale. Let's see. Here we go. We do. Did that change for you?
No, I didn't see it.
Okay. You missed it too, Dale. I made the joke that you lost your internet because God smited you after you picked on UNC basketball. But anyway, it should be up on the screen.
That could have something to do with I tell you what, I can talk to you about the roadmap a little bit without looking at it. That essentially it says we went from GP 2013, GP 2015, GP 2016, GP 2018, and then we went into 18.2. And then from that point forward, which that was really the service pack to GP 2018, like Philip said, that made it very confusing to go from 2018 to 18.2. And from that point forward has been 18.3, 0.4, 0.5. And I had clients once upon a time that said, you know, we don't want to upgrade every year. It's an expense. It's a hassle. We got to be out of the system. We have to do all this, jump through all these hoops. So let's just stay on the version we're at. And that worked for a lot of people, unless you're on payroll. If you were on payroll, you had to update every single year to stay in payroll tax compliance and to get your W-2 year-end updates. But then in 2020, the IRS got bored and decided to change the way that 1099s work and went from all of the years that I've worked with them of 1099 miscellaneous, they got rid of that and made a 1099 NEC. So every single person that did payables and tracked 1099s had to have an upgrade. And you had to at least get up to 18.3 in order to be able to use those 1099s. So we had a lot of people doing several step upgrades to get up to that point. IRS has changed the 1099 several times in the last few years. Don't know the reason why. Like I said, maybe they were bored. So we've had to upgrade each of those. Now, ever since 2019, Microsoft has kind of said, here is what's going to happen. We're going to give you through 18.x, and then in the year 2028, and they've always said and beyond. We don't really know what that means. That you can see on the slide, I believe it shows, and I think I've got a copy over here.
It does. It just says 2028 and beyond.
There we go. I can see it. I've got a copy of my own, but it basically says that mainstream support is ending for these things, but they will not actually support you of your live system unless you are on the current version. I think they'll support one version back now. So you have to go through your upgrades and have to stay up to date with that process in order to receive Microsoft support. That's always been the Massey Consulting and the Dean Dorton Consulting. We're going to try to help you no matter what. So we have supported versions back, but I will admit it's not easy to do. And if it gets beyond our skill set and we have to go to Microsoft, the first thing they ask, have you updated? Are you on a current version? If not, that's step one. So that's essentially where the life cycle is. As of now, we don't know what happens after 2028. Like Philip said, I don't think it's just going to die. And for a lot of people that don't need upgrades, can you still use it? Probably. What happens if 1099s change again? Who knows? We really don't know what will happen after 2028 at this point.
Right. All right, Dale, things we loved about GP.
All right. So what we loved about GP, now what you're going to see on this slide is you're going to see essentially the things that Philip talked about that were great about GP. And we liked a lot of those things, or loved, put the ED in quotation marks there. Those things have now become liabilities. So your assets became liabilities, essentially, if I make an accountant joke there. So first of all, it goes back to medieval times. How many times have you looked at a GP report and thought, this looks like something that was made for DOS? That's because it was made for DOS. So you have some of those system canned reports that come out, they don't export out to Excel correctly. They don't look right when you print to PDF. They have odd margins. They have a font type that just doesn't look right. So you do run into things like that. Now the partner focus, like I said, it was a huge cast of characters, and that partner group, the ISVs, the third-party people that used to make things for GP, I've watched over the years, those get bought and sold. So even large ISVs or people that used to make products for GP have been sold to other companies, and they're buying them up. And I've watched even those things, people like McCorma move away from support for GP and move into other products like Business Central or Intacct. Full control with on-prem. Now, this was a great thing. It was great to have the server on your system. You could do what you wanted to with it. You could didn't have to wait on anybody else. You had control of it. But when you have control of it, you have control of it. You have to make sure that you do all the backups. You have to make sure that you are in compliance. There's nobody to cross-check to make sure that you are actually up to date. You know, all those updates, all the security measures, all the backups, all the redundant, all of that is on your shoulders. And you sometimes can't get support if it's on your system. I still do a lot of GP support. And even with all of the connection tools that I have today, you know, the ConnectWise Manage and the different remote desktops and things like that, sometimes one of the biggest issues of providing support is access to your system or getting with your IT person to get me into your system. So while that's a great thing, it can also be a negative. Now the history repeats itself. The no major changes, that's great. And I tend to be one of those tear it out of my cold dead hands type of people. I don't really like change. I like to know what I'm doing, and I like to be good at something and know exactly how all this works, and I want to keep it this way. But I have watched things like that prohibit people from moving forward. If you're doing work the exact same way you worked 20 years ago, that just means you have not taken advantage of technology from the last 20 years. And I want you to think about what has changed in 20 years in the technology world. 20 years ago, there were no smartphones. So you're actually using technology that was made or used before smartphones. So you're missing out all of those benefits because you're doing it the same way you used to. Now, the other part, you can tinker with the universe. Now, that database access, I love it in some ways. And if you're one of my clients on the call today, I've probably dug into data and pulled some SQL data out for you. I have clients where I've made access databases that did all kinds of reporting things that you would never get a report writer to do, that just pulls raw data, and then you can take it and massage it and do things with it. And that's great. That's good stuff. But if you wanted to be compliant for audit, who's to say you can't just go into a system and change it? You're really susceptible to data changes. Other parts about that would be the other times I've had to get into the GP backend database, the SQL database, is because something didn't post correctly. Those of you that have used analytical accounting probably, or I'd say a high likely percentage of people that use analytical accounting have had to use SQL scripts to update analytical accounting tables because they don't always post correctly. So access to the data can be good, but it can also open up for problems as well.
All right. So thank you, Dale. Let's talk about a few things here that are some bogus pitfalls of on-prem. And I will say, Dale, I did make a note that you made an accounting joke, and so we're gonna have to put that in your personnel file for doing that. But anyway, all right. So it's what went wrong with all of these things, right? And I don't think it's necessarily of what went wrong, but maybe it's what didn't change, what didn't advance, what didn't mature, what didn't keep up with this type of on-premise software solutions like GP. And there's others out there. It's everything from QuickBooks Desktop to Dynamics GP, Dynamics SL. A lot of the Sage platform solutions, Sage 100, Sage 50. You could probably go on and on naming products that are in the same type of a boat as Dynamics GP, but it's one of those things where what is happening with these right now. So when we get to the point that we are right now, and as Dale mentioned, one of those striking things is the fact that smartphones were not around 20 years ago. And I said that Great Plains Dynamics came out in 1992. That's 32 years ago. Let's sit down and think about that. And maybe are there people on this call that weren't around 32 years ago? That is certainly possible. Dale and I were both definitely here at those times, but definitely could be people that weren't even around at that time. And how much have you grown over time? How much have you matured? How much have you learned? How much different are you now than you were 32 years ago? Or how much have you taken advantage of during all that time to grow and to be different? And what you've seen with a lot of these on-prem legacy software solutions like Dynamics GP is that they just haven't done that. They've done their best, but maybe they've got constraints. I told you when I first started working with GP, one of the things that I was struck by was the fact that there were Macintosh specific elements of GP, Great Plains, that I was really surprised to see in there in a business world. Now, today, I love my MacBook, and you will pry this out of my cold, dead hands and push me over to a Windows machine. But back then, it was just really odd, and I couldn't understand it. But it happens to be that a lot of that stuff that had to be accommodated is also the reason that GP has not been able to produce a web client that actually worked. Why GP has not been able to take advantage of some of the more modern technologies, some of the more modern disaster recovery, some of the more modern security and liability. What was it, TLS 1.2 a number of years ago that really threw the entire GP universe into a tizzy, to use a tech term, But that was a security feature that was found to be a very large hole in computing, and GP did not have a good way to adjust to fixing that for probably about 2.5 years because of the core components of that system. And so it makes things at this point now, with the pace of innovation, more difficult in order to stay up to date, in order to have a secure system. And if you're quite frankly in that environment, that's going to start to cause your business problems. And, you're going to be falling behind your competitors because you're not able to take advantage of maybe some of the e-commerce solutions without pulling in a third-party product and having them interface into GP. And then if you do that, it's not real time and you're not getting up-to-date information, or the connection between the two systems breaks. Whereas if you are on a more modern solution like a Sage Intacct tool, then you have a lot of these things built into the system already. And that's just not even to mention remote access capabilities, which is really the core concept behind the cloud, is anywhere, anytime access, and being able to pull up begrudgingly sometimes, I do admit, being able to pull up your accounting system from anywhere and approve things or review things or see dashboards or all that type of stuff. But you at least have that option where you don't with a lot of the legacy systems. And there's a lot of different things there that you do indeed have to deal with that you don't in the cloud, because you are outsourcing a lot of those headaches to a company that does that for a living, stakes their reputation on it, does it for a living, has done this kind of thing in a Sage Intacct case since 1999. So they know what they're doing. It's a very competent infrastructure that's out there. They're very keen on cybersecurity and all those types of things. So actually it makes a lot of sense to make that cloud move to get into a more secure environment as well. So Dale, let's party on, shall we?
All right, sounds excellent. All right, so let me talk to you a little bit about the bigger and yet smaller. So what that bigger yet smaller is, when you have a cloud system, your footprint on your PC is almost non-existent. You basically just need a web browser, and if you have the internet, then you have connection to a vast ERP solution. So small footprint on your PC, but you have access to a very large and powerful machine. Modern user interfaces, it's one of those things where when you take a look at something like a Business Central, a Dynamic, or a Sage Intacct, that you realize you're using a browser-based system, and so much of what we do today is browser-based. I can't think of very many things that I do that are not browser-based, and that just looks like what we use today. Now, the automation, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but there are so many things inside of something like Intacct where you have scheduled report printing or scheduled report sending, automatic emails that go out, tasks that happen automatically that you can schedule, and routine and recurrences and things like that just happen. Scaling your business with growth, we use something called a multi-entity share in Intacct. So that's a different concept than what you had in GP. So in GP, every single company was its own database. It was its own silo that company A and company B didn't really have anything to do with each other. I've had this discussion with some converts here recently, just talking about how that whole concept is different. That now we have something called a multi-entity share. So when you add a new company, you've already got a chart of accounts. You don't have to reload a chart of accounts. You've got your set of vendors. You don't have to create a vendor in every single company. So we're able to scale growth, add new entities, add new locations, add new departments, things like that, just with a very simple process. Implementation from ground up is easier. Things like imports. With Dynamics GP, you could buy some add-on products to do imports. With Intacct, almost every master list item or transaction type is importable through a template. Continuous updates and innovation. Now that gets back into our updates. And I know that if you all are still using GP and if you're on a current version, I probably did the upgrade for you. I think I do, Philip, almost all, if not all of our upgrades nowadays. So you know what process that
Yes,
is.
you do.
Unless you wanted to do some of them, but
Nothing.
so
Nothing.
you know what that process is like. So we basically have to schedule it out. We try to do a test upgrade. We install a new server. We schedule downtime. We make sure you've posted everything. Then we move databases and we go through the upgrade chug process and however many hours that takes. Then we move reports over and then we repoint all the clients. We upgrade all those and all of those things just to upgrade to a new service pack. With a product like Sage Intacct, they do 4 upgrades a year. They do quarterly updates, and you don't really know. There's no scheduled downtime. You use your system, and they do them on a Friday evening, and then on Monday morning when you come in, you just have new features. And they even give you here's the release update, that's what's going to happen. Now, Philip did our last one of those. Was last week, Philip, that you did, or was it? No, it was 2 days ago. You did
It was actually yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay, time flies, doesn't it? So, yeah, yesterday, Philip did the release 1 for 2024 for Sage Intacct. So, an overview of here's all the new things that you can use. Now, unfortunately and unfortunately, depending on which camp you fall in, every time I do an update for you, I used to have people ask, so do we need training when we do your upgrade? And I would say, nah, you'll be fine. You know, there's really nothing going to change. You just had to do this to get your new tax rollout or your new 1099s or something of that nature. There's one new field in this window. No big deal. You'll figure it out. That's pretty much been my response for at least the last 10 years. You're not going to notice much difference. But
yeah, and again, Dale, that client that was still on version 4 that was implemented in 97, and I think it was about, what year is this? 2024. I think it was about 2016 or something like 2016, 2017, and that was what he was the most excited about, was that they didn't have to get training on the new software. That's 20 years.
Yeah. One of those things that can be good, but when you really think about it, you just really didn't get much benefit to your upgrade. You just stayed in compliance. That was all. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so modern inventions. Let's talk about some things that, and by all means, there are several cloud options out there. The one that I talk about is Sage Intacct because that's the one that I know. That's what Dean Dorton went from GP to. Business Central is another option that we've worked with or talked about, and some of you have discussed with some Dean Dorton folks. I deal primarily with Sage Intacct, so that's the vantage point that I'm going to use here. AP automation. So there are AP automation tools built inside of Sage Intacct where you get a bill, it sends it to an email, the bill automatically comes into Intacct, you code it, you process it, and then there's even payment solutions that pay vendors ACHs directly out of Intacct. Now, we also use something called Marketplace Partners. And if you were ever curious, just go look up, just search for marketplace.intacct.com. There are hundreds of marketplace partners out there. There's at least, Philip, what is it, 25 to 30 accounts payable solutions for Intacct now. So a common one's going to be what used to be called Bill.com. They call it Bill. Most people have heard of that. Automated solutions for AP. Artificial intelligence. Now, AI is a big term right now. It's a term that everybody is saying, and a lot of people have no idea what it is. Go look into it, things like ChatGPT, things like that. I was astounded when one of the early developers for Sage Intacct, his name is Aaron, he was on the stage talking last year at our convention, and he said that when he asked ChatGPT how to do something in Intacct, it instantly came up with the instructions on how to use the API that he had written 10 years earlier. It just blew his mind. And then the next step was he told it a joke and it understood the humor. So That's just mind blowing to me that it actually gets humored why it would be funny to a person. So there's going to be things in that realm that we probably can't even imagine. Machine learning, Intacct already has things like GL outliers. So you can set up rules of if my journal entries go outside this realm, then flag me. And then it can start to learn how you make journal entries. And then if you make a journal entry that's not normal, you don't usually hit these two accounts or this account with this dimension, it can kind of flag and go, hey, you might want to look at this. But it learns the system as you use it. Real-time integrations, those automated solutions, Bill.com, because they're in the cloud, a Bill.com can have a real-time integration with Intacct. There isn't a send a file over, it downloads to your server, then you go find it, and use Integration Manager to import that file. Can still work that way, but with API solutions, they just move back and forth. Data moves back and forth in the background automatically and seamlessly. That's part of that shared data portal, backwards, but those cloud solutions can share data back and forth that way. One that I tell everybody that's coming from GP to Intacct, one of the most fabulous pieces, the continuous close. So if you've ever had me log into your server, make backups for you, help you with backups so that you can close your fiscal year, so that way you've got beginning balances in your balance sheet, there's no such thing in Sage Intacct. It basically just does a continuous close. You just have your balances there. There's no process for it. They're just there. Right.
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate on that, Dale, these are things that you're really never going to see inside a system like Dynamics GP. You can have bolt-on, add-on solutions for it, but you get to that point where you've got so many bolt-ons that it makes it harder to do the updates, the upgrades. It makes the bolt-ons more expensive than the actual accounting solution that you have. And really, to reach the level of that artificial intelligence and machine learning, like Dale was describing, that Aaron Harris was mentioning, and even other things, I've been really surprised by a lot of Chat GP stuff as well too. You're not going to get that inside of Dynamics GP. I am not a developer. I don't write code for a living, but I know a lot of people that do, and I have seen the underpinnings of Dynamics GP for almost 3 decades now, and you're just not going to get there with a solution like Dynamics GP. So these are some of the things that are tremendous benefits for making that move. And Dale, I know you know these folks.
All right, so we've got a couple of quotes up here. One from Spencer Farms and Legacy Healthcare. I'll let you read through those, but I'm actually going to tell you a different story. This one, I should have put this one up there, but this is better, I promise. So we had a GP client. Actually, they started at Small Business Financials, if I can resurrect that term for you. It was GP's baby partner that when they sunset that, every Small Business Financials client moved to GP. So they were a GP client. Every year when I went and did the upgrade, I would go to the CFO's computer and it would still be the SA login that I used to upgrade it the year before. They never logged in. They basically went to the controller for every report they wanted. Controller had to print it out and take it to them. So we moved them to Sage Intacct. When we did, the controller set up 7 dashboards that had every report that the CFO would want to see. No more printing. The CFO now just logs in, flips to the dashboard, sees everything they want, drills down to data, all is done. It's not the best part of the story. Here's the best part of the story. The CFO also traveled between multiple locations, and from Kentucky would travel to Florida often. And every time they would print checks, here was the process. They would print the checks out of GP. They would put them in a box. They would ship them to Florida. The CFO would get them out of the box, sign them all, put them back in the box, ship them back to Kentucky. They would take them out of the box, stuff them into envelopes, and then mail them to their vendors. So now, with Sage Intacct and Bill.com, combination of those two, bills come in to an email address. They get coded by their farm, by the barn managers. It's an equine company. They get approved by AP. Once they're approved, CFO, using her smartphone, looks at bill.com, approves the payments, and that is the check signature. Then bill.com automatically EFTs or ACHs or prints and mails the check to the vendors, and the process is done. So it went from a several-day process of boxing checks up and mailing them to just a few button pushes on your smartphone and no more tied to a system. So that's the best story that I can come up with. They actually say it was life-changing for them on that part.
All right. All right. Well, life-changing is definitely good. Let's talk about how you all might be able to experience a life-changing event as well. So what's our recommendations at this point? Well, you need to start your research soon. As we were talking through this before the presentation yesterday, I wanted to keep with the Keanu Reeves theme. And I said, nobody wants to be the last one off that speeding bus as well, right? You want to get off when you know there's going to be a problem. You want to get off. And we don't know when Dynamics GP is going to end, period. It is. And right now they're only projecting through 2028. And you may look at this and you may think, hey, it's February. It's February, right? February 2024. So that gives us some time. We got 4 years. I don't need to worry about this right now. I've got, financials to get out. I've got bank reports to complete. I've got payrolls to do, whatever it may be. I got stuff to do today. I'm not worried about 4 years from now. But you're going to keep that same attitude until 2028. And then at 2028, all of a sudden, you're going to be in a pickle. And you're going to look around and you're the one driving that bus now, and you got to keep it up to 55 miles an hour or else the thing explodes. So you got no time to look around and try to figure anything else out. Start your research soon. What are your future business needs? That is vitally important. Sit down, think about what you need, think about what you like in your computer software, what you don't like in your computer software, where your organization is headed. Are you going to be on mergers and acquisitions and buying other companies and expanding? Or are you going to be trying to offer different services? Or are you just going to stay the way you are, but you want an accounting system that just makes things easier for you? Plan ahead for your resource needs, right? What's your platform? On-premise costs, internal resources, necessary training. Talk to someone. I'm not telling you got to come talk to me or Dale, but we would love to talk with you about it. We'll be honest with you. We'll talk with you about where you are, what you have. To be totally truthful, I told one of our existing Dynamics GP clients last week that they could probably wait until next year to really think about this, but that not much beyond that. And they would really want to start considering what their options are. So we're going to be honest, we're going to be truthful with you. And certainly it is a good time to consult with an expert. And sometimes you need that, right? Potentially paying a little bit for that to find someone like Dale who has been in this for 20 plus years and has a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. If you got to pay for Dale's time, which sometimes you do, then it's absolutely totally worth it to do something like that. All right. So any questions? Nikki, has anything come through on the chat?
I do not see any questions in the chat right now. So apparently you guys have made everything crystal clear on the journey.
Nice. That's always a good thing to hear. I'm sure that it was all Dale. I'm going to leave you with a couple of closing thoughts on this. There's two quotes that I think are important in this case or applicable in this particular case. And the first one, actually, Nikki made me aware of recently. I was not aware of this, but Hofstadter's law, it always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. This is going to take longer than you think it is. It's not a quick changeover, no matter what software solution you pick. We often say I often say, I won't wrap Dale into this geekiness, but I often say that nobody wakes up in the morning, jumps out of bed and said, let's go buy some new accounting software today. It just doesn't work that way, right? It's something you need to plan for. It's something you need to research and look around on, and it is going to take you a while. The other and the last closing thought that I want to leave you with is one that I learned from Taylor McDonald many, many years ago. And I could go into a long spiel of telling you about who Taylor McDonald is, but he's a really important guy, and we'll leave it at that. It's from The Flight of the Buffalo by James Belasco and Ralph Steyer. And it says, change is hard because people overestimate the value of what they have and underestimate the value of what they may gain by giving that up. So if you read that again, changing from Great Plains is hard because we think that Great Plains is really, really good and it's a perfect system for us. But we're not aware of how a solution like Sage Intacct can be so much more impactful and so much better for our organization than Dynamics GP could ever be. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you for coming. Tell your friends. We'll I'm sure send out a copy of this presentation, a recording of it, so that you can watch it. Not only at night when you can't sleep and you need something to knock you out the rest of the way, but also if you have any thoughts about this, please let us know. Spread it around to your friends, family, anybody else that you might want to tell them about legacy accounting solutions and a really rad journey that they could go on with a great guy like Dale. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you, and have a most excellent rest of your day.